welcome to Show and Tell.
It's a subsidiary of Author's Note. This is our
Yep.
Patreon exclusive podcast.
Hell yeah. My name is Teese, and I'm
And
here.
my name is Kat. Oh,
Oh!
wow.
I was about to
You
do
cut
like a
me
panda.
off.
I was supposed to do a panda. Panda goes, my name's Panda, and I'm here with my good friend Teese. Teese, how you doing today? But here, let me do the author's note. My name's Teese.
And my name is Cass.
And today for show and tell, did you go first last time or did I go
Yeah,
first?
I went first last time. So you go first this time.
Right.
Okay, hold on. Before we even get started.
Yeah.
Hey, if you are listening to this, you're a supporter of our Patreon, and that is amazing and so incredibly generous and kind of you. So thank you so much. In our first month, we were able to cover the cost of all of our hosting fees, like not just for the podcast, but for website domains and all the incidental little fees that come along with that. That is so spectacular and so amazing, and we cannot thank you enough. And we're really delighted by the choices you are making in our polls. And again, if there's ever anything we can do to make the Patreon experience better for you, let us know.
So today for show and tell, I brought the album that fundamentally changed my life. And that's
The Austin Powers soundtrack.
You're kind of close, unfortunately. This
Banana.
So actually, the album that I'm talking about is the Powerpuff Girls Heroes and Villains, which is a compilation album that came out in the year 2000. Good old Y2K. And it is a soundtrack that is combined to kind of basically play as an album, but also at the same time as like an episode of the Powerpuff Girls, if that makes sense.
Almost like a drama CD.
Yeah, kind of. So the opening track is the Powerpuff Girls main theme song, and then after that plays, the narrator's like, the city of Townsville, blah, blah, blah. And then it shows, it strings along the plot of the story, and then the songs throughout the album plays the whole entire episode out, essentially. So it's really fun. So if you're a fan of the Powerpuff Girls, I highly recommend it. But unfortunately,
and this is OG Craig McCracken Powerpuff Girls. Yeah,
it 100% is. And unfortunately, on YouTube, the version that's available on YouTube does not include the hidden bonus track at the end of the album. But I physically put this album onto my computer, so if anybody actually wants to listen to it, I can give it to you on the DL, or if you happen to find it used, I highly recommend you picking it up. And this album is
maybe we just pop that in the Patreon post,
Yeah. Wink wink.
Shh, be cool, guys. Be cool.
So yeah, obviously I'm not distributing something illegally. What are you talking about?
You wouldn't download a Powerpuff Girls album, upload it to Patreon from the quintessential Craig McCracken run?
An album that literally has probably been out of print for the past 18 years, I'm gonna
You wouldn't download 3 chemically altered little girls, would you?
So this album has a lot of components of music that I listen to today as a 26-year-old, despite having this album this came out when I was 5, maybe 6 even, and it is just super important to me. It includes bands like Devo on it, Shonen Knife, Dressy Bessie, Biz, and there is a Komeda song on here. So, and also the Apples in Stereo. So, out of the...
Komeda.
Danganronpa?
Danganronpa?
No! After the German composer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was genuinely asking. I know it probably wasn't because Danganronpa hadn't been around by then, but also Komeda, tomato.
Komeda is a mid to late 90s, early 2000s, kind of like European dancey pop group. They're fun. So out of the 13 tracks, it features, I believe, 12 different musicians on it. I listened to 6 of these musicians. So
still today. Mm.
So this is like incredibly influential to me. Both Apples in Stereo and Dressy Bessie were a part of Elephant Six recording studio, and I'm a really big Elephant Six fan. So people who are more into music, obviously Apples in Stereo and Dressy Bessie, like I mentioned, but then the original of Montreal album is a Elephant Six album.
What kind of energy, like, if okay, if
Yeah.
for people who aren't as familiar with,
Yes, I'm sorry.
music
Yeah.
and subculture, like,
Yeah.
what kind of is the sound, the vibe, like, what sort of mood would you be in to listen to this, and, like, maybe
This
compare, well, obviously you still listen to some of the artists, but, like, what are some sounds of today that you would compare it to?
it's very indie pop rock alternative. I mean, the best way to describe it is if you are familiar with Cartoon Network at all, like from
Yeah.
the late 90s, early 2000s, if you have any frame of reference towards like all of the music videos that Cartoon Network used to produce, all of the random little mini episodes and drops, it's very late 90s Cartoon Network, oddly
Well,
enough.
and I would imagine then there's a lot of, like, the roots of what has now become lo-fi hip hop in there. So it is
No,
both,
so
like,
that's you're thinking more like Toonami era.
yeah, you're
So
right. I'm sorry.
this is more of the daytime. So this is like
Upbeat,
the
bright,
yeah, like when
little jazzy, little
They Might Be
funky.
Giants did a music video for Dexter's Lab and stuff like that at some
Right,
point.
yeah.
There was oh my god, a handful of music videos with like Ed and Eddie back in the
Mm-hmm.
day. So there's like it's a lot of like the similar music that like trickles down from your mind when you think of that era with Cartoon Network. So I guess that's not odd. It makes sense because it's from the same era and time. And so there's Devo on here, like I mentioned earlier. So Devo obviously is responsible for like Whip It and oh god, the lead singer. I'm blanking now because now that I'm talking about music, I didn't come fully prepared and write notes down like I did last episode. For instance, I mean, let's be real, the lead singer of Devo later on went to make the Sims 2 soundtrack, the theme song for Rugrats and
What?
stuff like yeah. He did the Lego
Oh,
movie
that's so
soundtrack.
cool.
Yeah, so like it's kind of like this fun kitty upbeat electronic. So Go Monkey Go, which I don't know if you probably remember, like Go Monkey Go,
I
Mojo
do.
Jojo. That's on this album. And
Hi,
then
hi, Puffy Ami Yumi.
they're
When will
not
they
on
return to
this.
us?
I so they actually broke up, unfortunately, but both of them do
No!
they do make music still, like like as solo
Mm-hmm.
artists, they do.
Mm-hmm.
And another one that probably a lot of people remember is Signal in the Sky by Apples and Stereo, who I mentioned earlier. And they're the Let's go power, super, super power, power, super, super power. So
You're
like,
unlocking things in my brain that have long
yeah.
been trapped away. Thank
I
you.
I literally listened to this album on my way home from work today.
Aw.
And Shonen Knife is on here too, who is so quintessential 90s Japanese girl rock and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And for people who are more into that stuff but might not know Shonen Knife, which damn, that's really unfortunate. But Shonen Knife also did a song on the Parent Trap soundtrack. And
Lindsay
Shonen
Lohan one?
yes,
Okay.
yeah. And they did a cover of On Top of the World by the Carpenters. So Shonen Knife is really similar to like Otoboke Beaver and
You know, that band that everybody knows, Otoboke Beaver.
actually a lot of people do. Thank you very much. Who else listens to
I
so
used to think that I had obscure music taste, and then I met you, and I was like, I am nothing.
It's
I
okay.
am
I probably don't know a
pathetic.
lot that you listen to either, so it's all good. A lot of according to Spotify, fans also like 5678, who I also listen to, and Sibo Mato, who I listen to as well. And Sibo Mato is in the Jet Set Radio soundtrack for people who like
Oh,
that game.
yes.
So there's a lot of this is very time capsule-y as an album, but
Hmm.
it's something that I heavily reflect on. Also, Biz is fucking awesome. They are a three-piece set from Ireland that is a lot of like kind of very similar to like the same tempo as punk, but more
Hmm.
polished and a little bit more electronic alternative rock. And I really like them too. So there's all these great bands, and I it's a, the more as I've grown up, I will continue to like go back to this album and be like, oh shit, I listen to this band now as an adult and I love
Mm-hmm.
this still. And listening to this album is so nostalgic for me. I one time held friends captive in my car on the way home from an anime convention to listen to this album. And what's awesome is
Oh.
that each character has their own character song. So Shonen Knife does Buttercups, which works so well. Komeda does Blossoms, which also fits. And then Dressy Bessie does Bubbles, which is fun. And then at the very, very end, there's a hidden bonus track where after the ending Powerpuff Girls theme song is done, which actually the ending theme is done by Biz too, if that helps paint a
Mm.
picture for you. And the ending track at the end of it has a alternative version to the episode with Rainbow the Clown, the Love Makes the World Go Round episode. And it's more done in a more classic 1950s sing-along radio station style version of it.
Oh.
And it's just so charming. And I just really love this album. I think it's really fun. I think when I talk about like music that's super influential to me, this album in particular always comes up along with like 2 or 3 other albums that I will spare people from talking about.
When did you
But
get this album?
I was 5 years old.
Oh, wow.
So I still have my copy of it. I have it. It gets transferred to every single computer I own. It's been on
Hmm.
all 4 iPods that I have owned throughout my life.
The iPod Classic.
I still
We're
use
never
my
going to
iPod
surpass
Classic.
that. We're never going to surpass that. It was an
We're never.
ingenious little machine, and I miss mine every day.
I still use mine quite often, actually.
Good. It's a good machine.
I do want to change out the battery, so one day. But I just love this album. I genuinely do, and it's just like a part of me. And when I find other people who know this album well, and then I describe what my music taste is, they're like, okay, yeah, this makes sense. And it's, just go back to some of the stuff that you loved as a kid, and especially compilation albums. Like, I know a lot of people kind of brush off compilation albums and they're like, oh, they're not real music. But also, soundtracks and compilation albums are fantastic and are great resources to discover new music you've never heard of before, Like,
Collaborative projects are also such an amazing way that you can see an artist in a new perspective because they're playing off of other people
yes.
outside of their bandmates in a very
Yes.
new and refreshing way that is just like
Mhm.
it's so altering but in such a
Mhm.
positive fashion, you know?
And I don't know if this was kind of like, hey, Cartoon Network reaching out and be like, hey, write these songs. I
Mhm.
don't really know. I haven't really read up on it. It's just something that genuinely I just loved and I wanted to share. And
So what's the full name of that album for anyone who wants to look for it?
the Powerpuff Girls, Heroes and Villains, music inspired by the Powerpuff Girls.
Oof.
It's also available on cassette if you're one of those kind of people too.
I'm almost surprised that you're not a cassette person. Like, I know you have vinyls, but I feel like...
I own cassettes.
Oh, okay.
So
I feel like I can just
unfortunately,
very
I don't
easily
have.
see you with, like,
Yeah.
a pink cassette player on your hip, walking down the street, you know?
So I still have my Walkman, actually, my CD Walkman, and then I do own cassettes. However, I do not own a cassette player. Up until last May, I did have a car still with a cassette player in it, so I did
Mhm.
listen to cassettes that way. However, once I got a new car, they don't make cassettes anymore. So
Cowards.
I was thinking about investing in a cassette player, but also the head cassette person in my life is my good pal Shiv, and Shiv is really on the ball with cassettes. I buy them cassettes often as gifts,
Mhm.
and they own cassette players. So if we're ever like at a picnic together or at a con that has like an outside space, if you ever see me and Shiv together sitting on a blanket, we are laying down listening to a cassette together.
How
So
beautiful.
and so in theory, if I did buy cassettes, I'd be like, hey Shiv, can I play a cassette? And they would probably let me right away. So
Oh.
in theory, so I am a cassette person too.
Mhm.
I'm, truth be told, predominantly, I'm actually a used CD person. I
Mm.
prefer to own CDs. My last car, as well as having a cassette player, also had a 6 CD change player in it.
Oh,
And it was so tasty.
the sex appeal.
Oh my god.
Baby, this bitch holds so many CDs.
Literally, and it was like, and I was one of those I am one of those people where like no matter what little pocket you open in my car, you will
There are
find a
CDs.
CD. Yeah, and
Like
now
hamster cheeks with seeds.
yeah, pretty much. So when I got this new car. I still have my CD collection. It's just in my room and in my basement, but my car collection has been very slimmed down to albums that I listen to on repeat, albums that aren't
Hmm.
available on Spotify, and albums that just bang, that just feels right to have on a CD at all times.
Yeah.
And I actually don't have that in my car. I should add that to my car now that I'm thinking about it. But like this, and in particular, the Sailor Moon Luna Rock album is super influential to me, but nothing can top Heroes and Villains for me.
Thank you so much for sharing that.
Please,
That's
if
so
you want the audio,
wonderful.
I will give it to you. Like,
Yeah, I do. I want to
yeah,
listen to it. I
yeah,
There's
yeah.
something about like drama CDs and collaborative CDs like
Hmm.
that I really adore it. Just all the different
Yeah.
flavors coming together
Hmm.
in a really juicy
Tasty,
new
tasty
story.
way.
So this week, or I guess this month for show and tell, I decided I wanted to talk about Kiki's Delivery Service.
Oh,
Kiki's Delivery
oh.
Service is not my favorite Ghibli movie, but it is one
Hmm.
that is very, very important to me, and I think it is something that everyone could benefit from watching at any point in their life.
Huge
I
agree.
first watched Kiki when I want to say I was probably a preteen. I don't
Hmm.
remember the exact age, but I think I watched it at a friend's house. And I recently rewatched it. I went through a huge stint. I have seen Kiki at least in the double digits at this point, and a huge portion of that numbering is because when I was in a huge crunch in high school and had to get a semester's worth of work done in the span of 24 hours, I just put Kiki on loop. And I think watched it
Wow.
15 times.
That's
Just
really good though.
ended
I
it,
love that.
started it
Oh my god. Can I
again.
tell you actually something kind of funny but also kind of sad at the same time?
Oh no.
So,
Yeah.
I I've mentioned it on the pod before, but my experience with Studio Ghibli, I was 4 years old when I first started watching Ghibli,
Hmm.
and the only other person I actually knew who was into Ghibli besides me was my childhood best friend and my 5-year-old token heteronormative crush at the time because we were literal 5 to 7 year olds when I knew him, and he was like my best friend. So it's like obviously I'm gonna marry this kid. So he was like it was one of those kind of situations, and
This is the
for
only boy I will ever meet in my life.
es-
I'm gonna have to marry him, I guess.
yeah, that's pretty much how I felt. And so he was the only other person who watched Kiki's Delivery Service. So I showed him Totoro, and his family showed me Kiki's Delivery Service. So it's been something that
Oh.
I've watched my whole entire life as well. I've owned it on
Oh.
VHS, I've owned it on DVD too, and uh, only up until maybe about 5, 6 years ago, I found out in the Japanese version, Gigi doesn't talk at the end, unlike the English dub, and I didn't know
Mm.
that, and that made me burst into tears.
There's definitely something thematically happening there. I would like to go over the plot of Kiki's Delivery
Yes,
Service, if that's okay
definitely.
with you, for anyone
Yeah.
unfamiliar. Kiki's Delivery Service is about a young witch who is turning 13 years old, and in witch culture in this world, when witches turn 13, they go off on their own to find a town to live in and continue their training there, and basically starting a business there in one way or
Hmm.
another.
Yeah.
So
Taking care
on
of
then
yourself, being self-sustainable.
yeah, you go out and you become independent and learn what it's like to be a witch and like be the town witch essentially.
Hmm.
So Kiki, her mother is a very acclaimed witch who makes like lots of potions, and Kiki has a familiar who is a cat named Gigi, and he talks. I don't remember who voices Gigi in the English dub, but it's not a dissimilar tone from Billy Crystal voicing Calcifer in Howl's Moving
Yeah,
Castle.
yeah.
um, and so on like her journey, she all she wants is to find a town by the sea because she's like enraptured by the sea. And she runs into a witch who's like very well established, and it like kind of fills Kiki with a little bit of jitters and nervousness, and she ends up finding a job for herself after a woman leaves behind a pacifier outside of a bakery, and Kiki jumps on her broom to fly it down to her so that the baby isn't upset. And the owner of the bakery invites Kiki to stay on in a guest house that she has out back, basically working as a delivery girl for herself and also working in the bakery part-time. Kiki loves it. She's really fantastic at it. She is an impeccable flyer, but she ends up getting invited to a party by a boy who is just in love with her, like love at first sight. And you have probably seen this boy if you haven't seen Kiki's delivery service, because everyone on the internet agrees he looks exactly like Griffin McElroy. Um, and he does. I mean, he looks like Griffin.
Griffin McElroy and Graham from Animal Crossing.
So this boy who just has like the biggest crush on Kiki invites her to a party, but she has a delivery earlier that day. And in the mess of the whole delivery, she ends up staying too long, gets caught in the rain, and the girl who receives the delivery is like really kind of rude about it. And Kiki gets sick, she misses the party, she goes back and she just lays in bed for days. The whole movie is a metaphor, and I mean, it's not a very, like, soft metaphor or anything. It is explicitly a story about what burnout and turning your passions into your job can do to you if you aren't careful, and how to sort of balance those things. And so, like after Kiki gets sick, she can't fly anymore. She doesn't know how, and she starts to get really anxious about the fact that maybe she'll never be able to fly again. And then she can't hear her cat talk, and that freaks her out. And the only way she kind of comes back to herself is after this artist she meets brings her on a retreat to her cabin in the middle of the woods and says, like, you're going to be able to fly again. You just have to give yourself time and take a break and not think about it so much. And she is forced to fly again in the end to save the boy who has a crush on her after, like, this huge disastrous incident with a Zeppelin. Yes. When a giant Zeppelin gets taken up by a gust of wind, and he's one of the only people still holding on to it. And of course, like, this thing is ready to crash. He is, likely to fall off the rope that he's dangling from, and she flies to catch him. It is a very, very sweet and positive story, and, like, kind of the perfect rainy day movie, I feel like, but is, I think, a really fantastic movie. One, for anyone to watch, but especially for creatives to watch. Because, one, it's a Ghibli movie, so creatively it is just absolutely beautiful. But it really crosses this spectrum, right, of not only speaking to kids on that aesthetic level. Kiki is also a child, they're cute animals. I am obsessed with the dog that loves the little cat plush, and, like, granted, he knows that Gigi is a living animal, but I love that this dog is just obsessed with the cat and carrying him around everywhere. Yeah. I think that's the cutest thing ever.
I'm obsessed with how the herring pie looks in that.
Oh, the herring pie looks so good. I wanted to try
herring pie my whole entire life because of that. I don't know if it even tastes good, but I want to try it so badly because of that movie. And even, like, as a 6-year-old, I was like, yes, I need to eat this, mommy. And I, like, mentioned to my mom one day, she's like, I don't think herring pie tastes good. And I was like, but can't we find out?
I'm sure Binging with Babish has an episode on it at this point.
I would hope so. Hope so.
There are so many little set pieces throughout the movie that really make it feel so warm and cozy and realistic. And Ghibli excels at that, at having those moments of, like, real peace and honesty. Like, the fact that she works out of a bakery, you love it. You love the big husband who's, like, carrying around the giant racks of bread and spinning them, and the cat's like, wow.
I have such vivid memories of my childhood watching that movie, but also seeing the trailer for it. And the song that was used in the trailer, which is like and I'm gonna fly higher. That one, I think it's so sweet. And I've listened to it, like, going back, and it's always so comforting to listen to. And then even at the end with Tombo going, wow, what a cool witch. It's just always sat with me in such a way. And
Tombo's such a respectful young boy.
I love Tombo. I've cosplayed Kiki's delivery service. It's something that's really near and dear to my heart as well. And it's it's a good coming of age book, I
It
think.
really is,
It's
yeah.
beautiful. And all Studio Ghibli is really fantastic, and that makes me
Hmm.
feel that way. Like Cat Returns is a really great example of that. I'm a huge Castle in the Sky.
Never seen
Literally,
it.
oh, Cass, can we
Listen,
watch
I
it
know. I
together?
really want to watch it, but every time I'm in the mood to watch like a Ghibli
Mm-hmm.
movie, I'm always like, I want to go back to something I already know. Because most of
Yeah.
the time, like, I want to watch it while I'm working on something
Yeah,
because it
yeah.
it puts me in such a good headspace every
So,
single time.
I Castle in the Sky is, you know how like every kid has that movie that they watched over and over and over again?
Yeah.
Mine was Castle in the Sky for a very long
Taste.
time, and every time, like usually, like when movie theaters were a thing, Ghibli Fest existed through G
Hmm.
Kids and stuff like that. I watched Castle in the Sky. I see it every other year. I would say I go see it in theaters, and the first time I saw it in theaters, I actually cried because I got so overwhelmed at the concept of experiencing it
Hmm.
remastered and on a big screen. And I That's another one that I still have my VHS of. I own
Hmm.
multiple copies of. I own like some of the manga still panel art book manga things that existed for a while there. Like I happened to find them at a yard sale and I like snapped them up super fast. And it's Studio Ghibli is something that's so important to me as a whole and has really interwoven itself into just my love and passion for media.
Hmm.
And Kiki's Delivery Service really, I think, brought that forward. Because, like,
Hmm.
for me, Totoro and Castle in the Sky was just something I happened to watch and I got really lucky that I found. But
Hmm.
Kiki's Delivery Service at the time was the most accessible one.
Yeah.
So when I would make friends and I would talk about Studio Ghibli, I'd be like, Kiki's Delivery Service? Because it was like aired on Disney Channel at one point, you
Yeah.
know? So a lot of people know through Disney Channel. And then, like, the next big one for a lot of people is Howl's Moving Castle. But,
Hmm.
like, I actually
Or
saw
Spirited
Howl's
Away.
or Spirited Away, and like Spirited Away won best animation when it
Yeah.
came out, and then Howl's Moving Castle was like the first movie that wasn't a full release but had more than a limited release
Yeah.
for a lot of American audiences. And I I mean I was 10 years old and I actually my mom drove an hour away to go see Howl's Moving Castle in
Nina.
theaters with me.
Nina, our
And
hero.
she brought my cousins, she brought my neighbors, like we piled as many people in my car as we could and we went to go see
Kids
it.
come absorb the culture.
Yeah, essentially. And it's just something that stuck with me for a really long time. And I think Studio Ghibli is the beginning of me genuinely caring about what stories can be told through a movie. So
Yeah.
I owe a lot to Kiki's Delivery Service as well. I'm
Hmm.
really happy that you brought it to Show and Tell.
Well, I think the thing, and I said it a little bit before, but Kiki's Delivery Service is, I think, one of the Ghibli movies that no matter who you are, it
Mm-hmm.
applies to you in
Yeah.
some form or fashion because
Yeah.
we all have a habit, right? Especially in like the current economic climate of pushing ourselves too far, of
Mm-hmm.
monetizing our hobbies and like not seeing any other options and not knowing what to do when like we don't feel like doing those things anymore and we don't
Mm-hmm.
know how to just stop. We're
Mm-hmm.
not
Mm-hmm.
taught that. You know, capitalism doesn't want that. But I fun personal story time. When you go on HRT, a lot of people, specifically testosterone, experience like a decreased ability to cry. It becomes
Mm-hmm.
way, 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 way more difficult to cry. And I think since starting testosterone, I've only been able to get in like one good cry in like coming up on 2 years now, which has had its frustrations. But when I was watching Kiki, I got really, really choked up at the end when like people were cheering for her through the
Mm-hmm.
TV and were getting
Yeah.
like really anxious about her and shouting her name because it was just like there is support for you and there is love for you and people want to see you excel at the things you're doing and to be happy. And that was just such a really touching moment that really came through. And Kiki has so many of these little tiny bit characters that really come together to create a fleshed out community. And like they're not all friends. They don't all interact with each other. These are just individual people that Kiki has met and touched along the way. And there is
Mm-hmm.
something so magical about that, and it is so beautifully put together, and I cannot recommend it enough. It is on HBO Max. I think you can probably also rent it on Amazon Prime if you don't have a physical copy of it yourself. But it is a wonderful movie and good for any day or any mood that you might be in. Absolutely beautiful.
Having a little cry. Ooh.
Have a little cry.
I'm having a little cry.
No.
Just thinking about it. And I just, sometimes I get choked up and I think about.
I think the really nice thing about Kiki, right, is that, like, in a lot of Ghibli movies, even the ones that are more geared towards children, there are a lot of heavier topics dealing with, like, loss of parents and things like that can be kind of hard. Kiki doesn't have any of that. It is an incredibly nuanced story about, like, very real things that affect us throughout our lives, but, like, you don't necessarily have to worry about, like, witnessing a very ill parent in the hospital or Chihiro's, like, severe separation anxiety and that sort of thing. So that's why Kiki is, like, my automatic go-to if I'm having a really tough time.
It's good. It's good.
It's good stuff. There's a little black cat. Oh, beautiful.
Mr. GG.
Well, I think that's all.
Yeah. This was a good one. This was really great. I love show and tell. What the fuck?
Show and tell's so fun.
Damn. Another great idea from us. I genuinely love show and tell. I thank you everybody so much for subscribing to us and believing in our podcast and wanting to put your money behind us. I cannot say how much I appreciate you and how much a labor of love this podcast is, and it just makes me so excited.
Sometimes it's a little startling.
Yeah.
It's like, there are quite a few people here now.
Yeah. I mean, in the most recent months, we've kind of been growing a little bit, which is really exciting. And
we've been growing a lot. Like, let's be honest. We've been growing quite a bit. Yeah.
For a podcast that hasn't been around for a year yet, we've been doing pretty tasty, all things considered.
And, like, that is so much because of you guys, and, a lot of you are our friends. But that's really big to us, and that's a huge support, and we cannot begin to thank you enough for that.
Kiss a you. Love you.
Teese, we've talked about parasocialism. It's dangerous. You can't enable that.
What if you were my podcast listener and I was a podcaster and I gently kissed you as a thank you? No, I would not. No,
absolutely not.
No.
Bad.
Bad.
You ruined it. You ruined this episode of Show and Tell. Well, until next time, go do something nice for yourself. Just a little treat,
Enjoy
Maybe it's watching a movie. Maybe it's revisiting an album that you listened to as a child that really helped you, or that you just enjoyed. Maybe go pet an animal. Go look at a squirrel.
Wow.
Have a good day.
Squirrels. Bake a pie. Man, I
make a herring pie.
Yeah, I baked a pie for Easter. It was so cathartic.
There is magic in creation.
Highly agreed.
Well, thanks. Bye.
Bye. I love you. Bye.